Hello, everybody. Scott Golden, Golden Opportunities Coaching here. Welcome to those of you who are new. If you're new here, please like, subscribe, comment. We try to bring you emotional and psychological content in a relatable and understandable way, and we do that multiple times every day. So if you have an emotional or psychological question that you think could be helpful to understand from the viewpoint of a life coach, please feel free to drop a line below, and we'll do our best to get you an audio in 24 to 48 hours usually. Anyway, we're going to talk about abnormal emotions, or emotions that you don't think other people feel that actually more people do than you think. We get about 10 or so of these, so we'll run through them really quickly. Anyway, if you've ever felt like you can never really know a person because they live behind a mask, how much are they really telling me? What am I missing? Man, this is such a common emotion because the truth is you can never completely know a person, right? We only know the prism under which they allow us to see. We only know the things they tell us. We only know the things that they feel comfortable to share. Now, we can know a person very well, but even our best friend, our mom, our dad, our lover, there are things about that person we're never going to know because A, there might be things that they're running from within themselves. B, there might be things they don't think we'll accept. And C, there might be things they're still discovering about themselves. So it's very, very likely that even the closest people to you, there's some things about them that even if you've known them for years, that would surprise the heck out of you. And that's okay because everyone's felt that way from time to time. Now, another one. Ways to think that we can overcome the odds when other people wouldn't. So have you ever been in a situation and you've thought, hey, if I was in an earthquake, if I was in the midst of getting, especially with the COVID virus, this is what I'm hearing all the time. People usually come and say, what would I do if I was in this situation? Help me walk through this. And I literally have had dozens of sessions since the COVID virus began where I've actually talked to people through what they would do if they needed to overcome the odds of the pandemic, or overcome the odds of losing a loved one unexpectedly, or overcome the odds of finding out a loved one is an addict, or overcome the odds of, in other words, an unforeseen, unpredictable event that completely throws life upside down. Have you ever actually wanted one of those, or thought you were up to the challenge and just spent a lot of time daydreaming and thinking about what you would do in those situations? You're not alone. Believe it or not, this goes back to caveman times, and cavemen and cavewomen were wired for challenges. They were wired to be overcomers. They were wired to be people who made differences through how they overcame. And so they would challenge themselves, hey, I wonder if I can lift that log over there. And then sometimes they do, and it's yay, and sometimes they don't, and squish and mush. And then they realize what boundaries were. But from the beginning of time, we've always had an intrinsic nature to want to overcome insurmountable odds. Now, for those with physical, mental, or emotional disabilities, this is more prominent than for those that have, quote, whatever the, quote, normal life is for your community, your country, your wherever you are. Because the odds are stacked against people with seen and unseen disabilities. I know myself, man, I get excited when somebody says I can't do something. And I know that sounds really bizarre, but I get excited because I love the feeling, that moment, right at that moment where you prove somebody wrong. That's like one of my big addictions. Comment below if it's one of yours too. But throughout my life, whether it's the length of time I've lived, I was told I was supposed to be dead by 30. I'll be 39 in September if I make it that long. So I mean, think about that. It's almost a quarter of my life that I've lived where Western medical professionals said I wouldn't. I was told I'd never hold a job. I've run multiple businesses. I was told I'd never have a relationship. I've had several. There's so many things in my own life that I've done where I beat the odds, and it's an addictive thing. Once you've done it once, you really get cool with doing it again and again and again. Another one is, have you ever wanted to be a person that's ahead of world trends? Been able to predict where the finances of the world go, been able to predict where social behavior goes, being able to predict what's fashionable. That's a thing too. like a lot of people feel this way, and it's a normal feeling to have. You're not one of a kind. You may be more philosophical than most. You may be even philanthropic than most if you wanna be ahead of the world trends so you can help others. But you're not an abnormality if knowing where the world's going to be in 10, 20, 50, or 100 years, long after you're gone, is something you're passionate about. This is a normal thing, but it's not something that society talks a lot about because, honestly, none of us can completely predict the future, although we can chart its trends based on previous experience, based on talking to people who know more than we do, and it's really kind of fun to do anyway, just to kind of think about. I mean, imagine if you said to somebody in 1965 that there would be a device about the size of your palm or smaller that could contain the equivalent of every world encyclopedia, every world dictionary, and answers to almost every question on the planet. They would have looked at you like you were on some really heavy drugs, but now in 2020 that exists, right? So we never know where the world's going to go. Anyway, the phenomenon of feeling like you want to push people away and having no clue why, this is a thing that a lot of people don't realize they have, and they think that they're broken or that there's something wrong with them if they have this feeling. Most often this happens because they haven't taken enough time for self-care, and I deal with people all the time with this particular challenge. What happens is they begin to think, man, I never get time for myself, or gee, this person's not going to accept all of me, or you know, they're never going to get this part of me, or if I tell them this, they're not going to be my friend anyway. So let me just get away from them. Let me get them away from me. Or if they knew that I stole gum when I was 5, or if they knew that I once had a physical relationship with their crush or whatever. If they knew this, then they wouldn't want me. So let me get away from them before the conflict happens. That's so very, very common. And it's something that a lot of people don't admit to feeling because it's like, I don't want to push you away because that makes me a bad person. But sometimes we all need space just to breathe. And I know that physical claustrophobia is a thing. We all know what it's like to be claustrophobic or being afraid to be in small spaces. But I would even venture to say that more research should be done about emotional claustrophobia. Can you have too many emotions all at once where you just need room to breathe and time to breathe? If you've ever just had that moment where you wish you could turn worry off or stress off or turn your brain off, I'm common for this one, and so is nearly every person that has an addictive personality archetype, right? If a person drinks, or if a person does drugs, or if a person has promiscuous sexual activity, or if a person gambles, what are they really trying to do? They're trying to turn off negative emotions in their mind and divert it somewhere else for a moment. Now, the diversion may be obtained through negative means, but it has a positive outcome. For a minute, they get free. For a minute, they get comfortable. Now, this can be done in positive ways too. Like you ever just need, and I'm famous for this one. Every time I work with a client or every time I finish a project, no matter how big, how small, I take 5 to 15 minutes for music. And so music is my diversion. When I've completed a task, I go listen to a song, between 1 to 3 songs, and then I recharge and do what I need to do because for me, that's my diversion. But it's also the way that I turn off stress. Was this good enough? I turn off worry. Did I get enough done? I turn off what if someone doesn't like this? And all the negative emotions I throw into whatever music I put on, and that helps me to reset. Having a place where you can reset worry is a brilliant way to combat mental and emotional instability and challenges. Have you ever felt like you're in the wrong place at the wrong time? Like just, I don't belong here. Guess what? We've all felt that way from time to time. Usually it's because we feel socially excluded or because something in the surrounding doesn't seem right. I've actually seen people, especially people with OCD, that will have that feeling because a picture's hanging sideways on a wall. I actually was at a party with someone once and they said something doesn't feel right. And they went over and they looked and there were 2 books on a bookshelf of about 50 books and the 2 books were not in line with the others. And this was enough to make the person say, this doesn't feel right. That's a common thing too, and if you've ever felt that way, it's just I don't belong here or something isn't right here. Pay attention to your intuition because it may be something big enough that needs your attention. It may be nothing, but always err on the side of caution that it might need your attention at some point in the not too distant future. Um, I feel small in a big world, or I feel big in a small world. These are common thoughts. I feel big in a small world is a lot more common. So what happens is people will go something like, I've grown up in this town. I think I know everybody. I think I know everything. I know where all the cool places to hang out are. I know where the cops go on 3 a.m. stings. I know everything. I'm a big person in a small world. Or I'm a small person in a big world. This is more common for people who understand how big the world really is. Have you ever thought that there's 195, 97, depending on your perception and which world organization you believe, but at least 195 countries in the world, of which you may probably see, if you're lucky, 5% of them. For most of us, we don't see most of the world, and that means we don't meet most of the people, and that means we don't truly understand most of the customs, and that means we miss out on more opportunities than we have. The idea of how small and insignificant in some ways we are in the history of the cosmos can take people down a thought. Now, here's the thing. Everything you write, everything you speak that's recorded, everything you say or do for another person that they remember and share with the next generation, all these things leave the footprint of the image that you leave upon the world. So whether you live 5 more years or 70 more years, or whether you live to be 15 or you live to be 115, there are ways that you can imprint upon the world a legacy. And most people, believe it or not, contribution, one of the 6 human needs according to Dr. Maslow, that feeling of I've contributed to the world and I'm going to leave it a better place than I entered it, is a driving force for most people, even if they don't understand that it's what's driving their behavior. So if you ever feel too small in a big world, how to make yourself feel a little bit bigger is something important to consider, and creating an action plan around that is very, very useful. Now, thoughts, here's another one. What other people think of you really doesn't matter in most cases. 2 reasons for this. One, someone's thoughts of you are not going to change that much what you're going to do in the long run. Yes, they may change what you do today. They may change what you do for several weeks or several months. But who you are 5 years from now, very rarely, it's about 2% of the time, is going to be shaped by what someone says or thinks about you in right now. In other words, you will have, and there's research that says that we will have approximately 1 person per 10 years of life. So say you live 100 years, you're going to have 10 people in your life that what they've said or done is going to really shape who you are. But most of us, we live to be an average of about 70. So we're going to have 7 people, but then you take away the person from 0 to 10, because most of that stuff, at least half of it, we won't remember, right? Most of us don't remember great details of major events before we're about 5. So let's say most of us have about 6 people, give or take, that have that influence on us. Now we all have this thought that like every interaction matters, and what social groups think of us actually matter. No, what we do with what we think of ourselves and the cueing of what other people say about us and how we use it matters. But what they actually think really matters a lot less than most people give it credence to. And then the last one, have you ever wanted to play out a conversation in your head before you actually go and have it? Or have you ever wanted to play out how something ends before you begin the journey? Yeah, most people do too, but they don't admit it. Most of the time, daydreaming comes down to playing out a conversation, scenario, or situation in our heads because we don't feel we have confidence enough to actually act it out in real life. And when we've played a conversation or a scenario like asking someone to dance or asking them out on a date or asking our boss for a raise or telling our kids that they need to stop doing drugs or whatever it is, when we've played it out in our heads enough that we feel more confident in our ability to react to the different scenarios that could be presented, it's then when we take action. But usually, if we're stuck with something in our head, it's because we don't feel competent or confident enough to take physical action around it. So if you're dealing with emotions you don't know how to handle or dealing with emotions that are flooding you, which flooding emotions are just emotions where it's like, I'm feeling too much all at once, I encourage you to reach out for coaching. You can do that through Twitter at PO Perception, or you can do that through here on YouTube, through the YouTube mailbox. That's another great way. I encourage you, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.